Welcome to What If Horizons, the podcast that takes your wildest, what if, questions and turns them into terrifyingly plausible scenarios. I'm your host, and today, we're tackling a question that's as dramatic as it is destructive. What if Earth suddenly stopped spinning? Picture this. You're sitting at your desk, sipping coffee, scrolling through your phone, and bam! The planet slams on the brakes. No warning, no countdown, just a full stop. What happens next? Well, let's just say your coffee isn't the only thing spilling. First, let's talk about momentum. Earth rotates at about 1,000 miles per hour at the equator. When that motion stops, everything not firmly attached to the ground keeps moving. That means you, your desk, your car, and even your unfinished pizza become high-speed projectiles. You'd be flung eastward faster than a Formula One car, and trust me, no seatbelt is saving you from this ride. Buildings. They'd topple like dominoes. Skyscrapers would shear off at their foundations, collapsing into rubble. Bridges would snap like twigs. And that half-built IKEA shelf you've been ignoring. It's now a deadly missile. But wait, it gets worse. The atmosphere doesn't get the memo to stop. It keeps moving, creating winds that make Category 5 hurricanes look like gentle breezes. We're talking sustained gusts of 1,000 miles per hour. Enough to strip the paint off buildings, uproot trees, and turn your neighborhood into a wind tunnel from hell. And then there's the sun. Without rotation, one side of Earth would be permanently baked in sunlight, while the other side would be plunged into eternal darkness. The sunny side would heat up to over 300 degrees Fahrenheit, turning rivers into steam and deserts into infernos. The dark side, it would freeze solid, with temperatures dropping to minus 150 degrees Fahrenheit. The only habitable zone would be a narrow band of twilight, where the sun perpetually hovers on the horizon. But even there, you'd face constant hurricanes and extreme weather. Now, let's talk about the oceans. Without centrifugal force, water would rush toward the poles, creating tsunamis miles high. Coastal cities would be wiped out in minutes, and entire ecosystems would be destroyed. Imagine the Mediterranean Sea relocating to the Arctic. It's not pretty. And just when you think it can't get any worse, Earth's shape starts to change. Our planet is slightly flattened at the poles due to rotation. Without spin, gravity would reshape it into a perfect sphere, triggering massive earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. The crust would crack and shift, unleashing chaos on a global scale. But hey, on the bright side, you'd never have to worry about daylight saving time again. Now that we've survived the initial chaos of Earth's sudden stop, let's dive into what happens next. Spoiler alert, it's not a picnic. The first few days after the planet halts its spin would be a masterclass in survival, or rather, a masterclass in how not to die. Let's start with the sunny side of Earth. With the sun permanently fixed in the sky, temperatures would skyrocket. We're talking 300 degrees Fahrenheit, 150 degrees Celsius or higher. Water would evaporate almost instantly, turning rivers and lakes into barren wastelands. Plants would wither and die within hours, leaving behind a landscape that looks like the surface of Mercury. Animals, they wouldn't stand a chance. Even the hardiest desert creatures would be cooked alive. But it's not just the heat, it's the light. Constant sunlight would disrupt ecosystems that rely on the day-night cycle. Nocturnal animals would be left without a purpose, while diurnal creatures would overheat and collapse. The food chain would collapse faster than a house of cards in a windstorm. And then there's the issue of water. With oceans migrating toward the poles, the sunny side would become a desert on steroids. Groundwater would dry up, and any remaining moisture would be locked in the atmosphere, creating a feedback loop of drought and heat. Imagine trying to survive in a world where the closest water source is thousands of miles away. Now, let's flip to the dark side. While the sunny side is frying, the dark side is freezing. Temperatures would plummet to minus 150 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 100 degrees Celsius, cold enough to freeze the atmosphere itself. Nitrogen and oxygen would condense into snow, creating a surreal landscape of frozen air. Life on the dark side wouldn't fare much better than on the sunny side. Plants would freeze solid, and animals would either hibernate or die. The only survivors might be extremophiles, tiny organisms that thrive in the harshest conditions. But even they would struggle to adapt to such extreme cold. The real challenge, however, would be the lack of sunlight. Without photosynthesis, the entire ecosystem would collapse. No plants means no food for herbivores, which means no food for carnivores. It's a domino effect of extinction. But wait, there's more. The lack of sunlight would also mean no warmth. Any remaining survivors would have to rely on geothermal energy or artificial heat sources. And let's be honest, most of us aren't prepared to live in a world where the sun never rises. Now, let's talk about the twilight zone, the narrow band between the scorching sunny side and the freezing dark side. This is where humanity's last stand would take place. But even here, life wouldn't be easy. The twilight zone would be a battleground of extreme weather. The temperature difference between the sunny and dark sides would create perpetual superstorms, with winds strong enough to level cities. Rainfall would be erratic, and the ground would be constantly shifting as the planet adjusts to its new shape. Survivors in the twilight zone would have to adapt quickly. They'd need to build shelters that can withstand hurricane-force winds, grow food in unstable soil, and find ways to store water in a world where it's constantly evaporating or freezing. But even in this dire situation, there's room for innovation. Imagine underground cities powered by geothermal energy, or floating habitats that drift along the edge of the twilight zone. Humans are nothing if not resourceful, and in a world where the rules have changed, we'd have to rewrite the playbook. Of course, not everyone would make it. The initial chaos would claim billions of lives, and the harsh conditions afterward would whittle down the survivors even further. But those who do survive would be the pioneers of a new world, a world where the sun never sets or rises, where the oceans have relocated, and where the very concept of time has been rewritten. So, what would life be like in this new world? That's a question for the next chapter. If you thought surviving the initial stop was hard, welcome to Day 3, where Earth's weather system completely loses its mind. Remember when a little rain ruined your picnic? That's adorable compared to what's coming next. The Twilight Zone has become nature's version of a malfunctioning washing machine. With one side of the planet boiling and the other freezing, the temperature difference creates permanent hypercanes, storms so massive they make Jupiter's great red spot look like a bathroom fan. These aren't your grandma's thunderstorms. We're talking about systems that could swallow continents whole, with winds strong enough to sandblast concrete into glass. Now let's talk about something we all love to complain about, the weather forecast. Meteorologists would be out of jobs because predicting these storms would be like guessing which way a cat will jump. The jet stream, gone. Pressure systems, meaningless. Your weather app would just display a sad face emoji and the words, "Good luck." Here's the terrifying part. These storms never end. No calm eye, no passing fronts. Just endless, howling winds that reshape landscapes like a toddler with Play-Doh. The only safe areas would be underground bunkers or deep caves, where the constant roar outside would make you feel like you're living inside a jet engine. And the rain, oh, the rain. When it does fall, which is randomly and violently, it comes in two flavors. 1. Boiling acid rain from the sunny side's evaporated oceans. 2. Frozen nitrogen pellets from the dark side's collapsing atmosphere. Neither is particularly good for your skin or your crops. Farming now requires hydroponic labs sealed tighter than a spaceship, because anything exposed to the outside gets either cooked, frozen, or blown to the next hemisphere. The oceans aren't doing much better. What's left of them is sloshing around like water in a moving truck, creating tidal waves that circumnavigate the globe every few hours. Marine life is either slowly cooking in the new tropical poles, flash freezing near the dark side, being blended into soup by the constant turbulence. Surprisingly, the best fishing spots are now in what used to be deserts, where temporary lakes form during the brief moments when the hypercanes decide to dump their payload. Of course, you'd need a submarine-grade fishing rod and a death wish to try your luck. Humanity's remaining outposts have become storm-chasing nomads, constantly moving to stay in the least deadly part of the Twilight Zone. The new most valuable skill, not medicine or engineering, though those help, but accurately predicting wind patterns by licking your finger and holding it up. And just when you think it can't get worse, it does. The lack of normal atmospheric circulation means toxic gases are building up in some areas while others become vacuum thin. You might walk outside to find you can't breathe, or worse, that the air itself is flammable. But hey, look on the bright side, at least you don't have to worry about forgetting your umbrella anymore. When the weather is always apocalyptic, you stop caring about bad hair days. Just when you thought Earth was done with its temper tantrum, the ground beneath your feet decides to join the rebellion. Welcome to the great planetary cracking event, where Earth's crust remembers it's really just a thin eggshell over a boiling pot of magma. Here's the problem. Earth wasn't designed to sit still. That constant spinning kept everything nicely balanced, like a perfectly spun pizza dough. Take away the spin, and suddenly our planet starts reshaping itself with all the grace of a collapsing souffle. The first signs come deep underground. With rotation no longer counteracting gravity, the planet begins the slow process of becoming perfectly spherical. This means, 1. The equatorial bulge, that extra thickness around the middle, starts flattening. 2. The poles get pushed outward. 3. The crust starts cracking like the desert floor in a drought. Within weeks, massive fissures appear along old fault lines. The San Andreas Fault, more like the San Andreas Grand Canyon. These aren't your average earthquakes. We're talking about seismic events that register off the Richter scale, each one feeling like the planet is trying to shrug you off its back. The most dramatic changes happen near the equator. As the crust compresses, some areas rise like bread dough while others collapse into steaming sinkholes. Cities built on stable ground for centuries suddenly find their foundations turning to liquid. Picture Los Angeles getting a surprise beachfront upgrade as half the city slides into a new ocean trench. Meanwhile, volcanoes that haven't erupted in millennia suddenly wake up with a vengeance. Yellowstone doesn't just erupt, it throws a full-blown tantrum, spewing enough ash to block out what little sunlight the twilight zone receives. The ring of fire becomes the ring of absolute chaos, with new volcanic islands forming and disappearing weekly. The really terrifying part, this isn't a one-time event. The planet will keep adjusting for centuries, meaning, you're safe. Location today might be underwater tomorrow. Maps become obsolete faster than smartphone models. The very concept of owning land becomes laughable. Underground bunkers, our last hope for stability, face their own problems. Geothermal energy sources become unpredictable as magma flows shift daily. One morning you might have free heating. By afternoon, your shelter is floating on a lava lake. And let's talk about the oceans, or what's left of them. As the crust warps, water rushes to fill new depressions, creating temporary inland seas that evaporate within months. The remaining marine life either gets boiled alive in new hydrothermal vents or flash frozen in suddenly exposed Arctic basins. Human engineering tries to keep up, of course. We see bridges designed to stretch like taffy, buildings on giant hydraulic stilts, entire cities built on floating platforms. But ultimately, we're just ants trying to outsmart a boot. The planet will reshape itself however it wants, and all we can do is try not to be standing in the wrong place when it happens. The silver lining, all this geologic activity creates stunning new landscapes. Imagine neon blue magma lakes lighting up the perpetual twilight, glass plains from sand melted by volcanic heat, towering crystal formations where mineral-rich geysers once erupted. Tourism isn't exactly booming, but for those brave enough or foolish enough to explore, it's nature's most spectacular demolition project. Just don't forget your heat-proof suit and will to live. Just when you thought Earth couldn't possibly throw any more curveballs, we arrive at the silent crisis happening 3,000 miles beneath your feet. While the surface has been busy with hypercanes and cracking crusts, the real party killer is brewing in Earth's core, and it's about to ruin our planet's magnetic personality. Here's the dirty little secret about our planet's spin. It's not just the surface that's rotating. That molten iron core has been doing a lazy swirl for billions of years, and it's this motion that generates Earth's protective magnetic field. Stop the rotation, and the core starts slowing down like a tired ballet dancer, with catastrophic consequences. Phase 1. The magnetic field begins flickering. Your compass, which used to reliably point north, now behaves like a drunk trying to find his keys. Navigation systems worldwide go haywire. Birds mid-migration suddenly forget which way is up. The auroras, they're having a rave party, appearing randomly across the globe like nature's disco lights. Phase 2. As the core's movement slows, the magnetic field weakens enough that solar radiation starts sneaking through. Within months, radiation levels at the surface double, then triple. Sunburns now happen in minutes. Electronics fry unexpectedly. That smartphone you're using to navigate this apocalypse, it's now a very expensive paperweight. But the real nightmare begins when we reach Phase 3, complete magnetic collapse. Without this invisible force field, Earth becomes naked against solar winds. Over decades, our atmosphere starts getting stripped away molecule by molecule, just like what happened to Mars billions of years ago. The sky literally begins disappearing. The timeline looks something like this. Year 1. Increased cancer rates and electronics failures. Year 10. The ozone layer becomes Swiss cheese. Year 50. Air pressure drops noticeably at high altitudes. Century 2. The sky turns from blue to dark purple. Millennium 1. Earth starts resembling Mars' thin atmosphere. Meanwhile, down in the core itself, the iron is beginning to crystallize. Without constant motion to keep it molten, the outer core starts solidifying in strange fractal patterns. This creates bizarre seismic effects, earthquakes that last for weeks, volcanoes that erupt in slow motion, and a new class of deep tremors that make the ground feel like gelatin. The most ironic twist, as the core solidifies, it actually gets hotter temporarily. All that crystallizing iron releases latent heat, meaning the very process that's killing our magnetic field is also cooking the planet from below. Underground shelters that survived the surface chaos now face rising temperatures that turn bunkers into slow cookers. Humanity's response has been creative. 1. Building artificial magnetic generators that keep failing spectacularly. 2. Developing radiation-proof crops they taste like cardboard. 3. Trying to jumpstart the core with nuclear explosions. This went exactly as badly as you'd expect. The few remaining scientists have come to a grim conclusion: we can't fix this. The best we can do is delay the inevitable while planning our escape. Some are looking at atmospheric containment domes, underground cities shielded by miles of rock, a mass exodus to, well, anywhere else. But here's the cosmic joke: Mars is looking pretty good right about now. At least it still has some atmosphere left, unlike what Earth is becoming. The final insult: without a magnetic field, all those beautiful stars in the night sky, what's left of it, stop twinkling. They just hang there, motionless and judgmental, like they're watching the world's longest funeral. Time has officially lost its mind. On a planet that no longer rotates, the very concept of days becomes as outdated as flip phones. That 24-hour cycle we used to structure our lives around. Gone. The sun just hangs there in the sky like a broken streetlight, leaving humanity collectively wondering, what day is it anyway? Asterisk. Let's break down the temporal chaos. 1. The death of the 9 to -5 asterisk. Without sunrise or sunset, work schedules become meaningless. The few remaining employers try implementing arbitrary time zones based on wristwatch batteries. Productivity plummets when no one can agree whether it's morning or night. The last HR department finally gives up and declares, just work when you're awake. 2. Calendar confusion. Remember leap years? Those were cute. Now we're dealing with sun cycles, when your location faces the star. Dark cycles, when you're in planetary shadow. Twilight purgatory, the in-between state no one can define. Farmers try growing crops based on light hours instead of seasons. The result: tomatoes that think they're potatoes. Trees that bloom and shed leaves simultaneously. A pumpkin patch that somehow produces watermelons. 3. Biological clocks go haywire. Human circadian rhythms enter full rebellion. Some people stay awake for 50+ hours straight. Others crash for naps, lasting days. A lucky few adapt by becoming permanently drowsy. The sleep deprivation crisis leads to bizarre new trends. Coffee IV drips, group yawning circles, energy communes, where people take shifts being conscious. 4. The end of holidays. Christmas in July. Try Christmas always or never. Without seasons. New Year's Eve happens whenever someone remembers to count. Birthdays are celebrated around the same general time maybe. Valentine's Day chocolate melts immediately in the sun zones. Religious groups splinter over conflicting definitions of holy days. The last recorded argument was between two priests debating whether Sunday still existed if the sun never sets. It lasted 300 continuous hours. 5. Timekeeping gone wild. Survivors develop insane alternatives. Hourglasses filled with volcanic ash. Candles marked with approximate hours. A cult that worships the last functioning atomic clock. The final nail in time's coffin. The realization that Earth's orbit around the sun continues, just without rotation. This means 1 year still passes, but contains 0 meaningful days. The ultimate cosmic joke. The oceans have officially declared war on humanity. With Earth's rotation gone, the delicate balance of tides and currents has collapsed into watery chaos. What was once a predictable ebb and flow has become a series of aquatic tantrums that make Poseidon look like a toddler with a squirt gun. First, the tides stop tiding. Without the moon's gravitational pull working in tandem with Earth's spin, the ocean becomes a stagnant soup. Coastal areas that once enjoyed gentle waves now face either 1. Permanent flooding as water pools toward the poles. 2. Sudden draining as entire bays disappear overnight. Marine life is equally confused. Fish accustomed to tidal patterns now swim in aimless circles. Coral reefs bleach faster than a 90s boy band's hair. Whales beach themselves in record numbers, seemingly giving up on this watery nonsense. Then there are the currents, or lack thereof. The Gulf Stream, that underwater highway that kept Europe warm, has come to a screeching halt. Without it, the UK becomes as chilly as Siberia. Florida's beaches turn into icy wastelands. The Mediterranean becomes a stagnant, salty swamp. But the real nightmare begins when the remaining water starts moving in bizarre, unnatural ways. The lack of Coriolis effect, that spin-induced force that organizes weather patterns, means ocean currents now flow in straight lines or spiral into massive whirlpools. These new super currents create underwater tornadoes that suck down entire ships, reverse waterfalls where rivers flow uphill, dead zones where water becomes completely still and toxic. The few remaining coastal cities face constant threats from 1. Flash floods that appear without warning. 2. Dry tsunamis, where the ocean suddenly retreats miles out. 3. Water quakes, seismic waves that travel through liquid instead of land. Humanity's attempts to adapt are creative, if not effective. Floating cities anchored to the seafloor until the anchors snap. Underwater domes for farming until the pressure crushes them. Artificial currents powered by nuclear reactors until they melt down. The final insult. The oceans are slowly migrating toward the poles, leaving equatorial regions high and dry. What was once the tropical Pacific is now a vast salt flat, while the Arctic and Antarctic become waterlogged wastelands. Marine ecosystems collapse entirely. Species that can't adapt to the new conditions die off, while others mutate into bizarre forms. Think bioluminescent sharks that hunt in perpetual twilight, giant jellyfish that float on atmospheric winds, crabs that walk on land for months at a time. The oceans, once Earth's lifeblood, have become its most unpredictable and dangerous feature. And as the water continues its slow migration poleward, humanity is left to wonder, will there be anything left to swim in? The Great Migration is complete. Earth's oceans have officially moved out. What began as a slow creep toward the poles has become a full-blown aquatic exodus, leaving equatorial regions as dry as Mars while transforming the Arctic and Antarctic into overflowing water worlds. The planet now wears its oceans like a pair of oversized, sloshing earmuffs. Let's tour the new waterfront properties. The Arctic Ocean 2.0 * now covers everything north of what was once Canada. Average depth 5 miles. Good luck finding the bottom. Features include the sunken Rocky Mountains, now coral reefs. The Statue of Liberty's torch peaking above the waves. A new North Pole, that's technically a giant whirlpool. The Antarctic Sea has consumed Australia and most of South America. Home to the world's last functional lighthouse, now useless. Current status: forming a new ice sheet from flash-frozen saltwater. Meanwhile, the former tropics have become the world's largest sandbox. The Sahara has merged with the dried-up Pacific to create a super desert where dust storms last for decades. Old shipwrecks sit miles from any water. The phrase, beachfront property, gets you laughed out of shelters. The few remaining humans clustered near the new coastlines face bizarre new challenges. 1. Atmospheric revenge. With most water now concentrated at the poles, humidity at the equator drops to 0%, your skin cracks instantly. Polar regions become permanent fog zones, visibility 3 feet. Rain only occurs directly over the new oceans, everywhere else is parched. 2. The Great Salting. As polar waters evaporate, salt deposits form mountains taller than Everest. The air tastes like someone left a salt shaker open. All freshwater becomes more precious than gold. 3. Marine mutiny. The creatures that survived the migration have evolved terrifying new traits. Squid that walk on land using their tentacles. Whales that breathe air for weeks at a time. Microbes that turn seawater into hydrochloric acid. Human attempts to adapt include building cities on giant floating salt flats they keep dissolving. Farming genetically modified crops that drink saltwater they taste like despair. Mining old ocean floors for water, mostly just getting sand. The final irony, all that water piled up at the poles has actually changed Earth's balance. The planet is developing a slight wobble, not enough to restart rotation, but enough to make the remaining oceans slosh unpredictably. So even in their new homes, the waters can't sit still. As for the former coastal cities, they're now either underwater museums, rusting scrap metal, tourist destinations for fish. The message is clear: Earth's waters have moved on. Maybe we should have been better tenants. Welcome to humanity's retirement plan, the Great Underground Escape. With the surface now offering all the hospitality of a blast furnace crossed with a meat freezer, our species has done what we've always done when things get uncomfortable: we've started digging. The last cities of Earth aren't skyscrapers or suburbs, they're sprawling ant colonies buried miles deep, where the only sunlight comes from LED recreations of what old people claim the sky used to look like. Life in the deep dark. 1. Real estate rules have changed. Property value now depends on proximity to geothermal vents. Windows, or video screens showing pre-collapse nature footage. The new penthouse suite means being closest to the surface and radiation. 2. The new food chain. Farming now involves hydroponic systems fed by mineral-rich groundwater, protein vats growing lab-designed meat substitutes, the occasional roasted cave cricket for authentic flavor. 3. Fashion trends. The must-have looks include lead-lined jackets, the new denim, rebreather masks with customizable filters, glow-in-the-dark tattoos because why not? The unexpected upsides. No more weather complaints, there is no weather. Commutes are shorter, everything's vertical. Spiders became extinct, silver linings. The government situation. What remains of authority is split between 1. The Geothermal Access Coalition controls heat distribution. 2. The Oxygen Cartel regulates air quality. 3. The last librarians preserving pre-stop knowledge. Law enforcement consists mostly of making sure no one hoards algae tablets or tampers with the carbon scrubbers. The worst crime. Stealing someone's photosynthesis lamp. The kids are different. Children born underground exhibit enhanced low-light vision, complete confusion about concepts like rain or horizon, and instinctual fear of open spaces. The current generation gap involves surface-born grandparents telling stories about something called the beach, while kids nod politely and check their radiation counters. The big problem everyone's avoiding. This isn't sustainable forever. Between the core slowly solidifying, cutting off geothermal energy, oxygen systems requiring constant maintenance, the psychological toll of eternal confinement, humanity's underground era has an expiration date. The smart money's on either A. Figuring out space colonization, B. Evolving into mole people, C. Accepting the inevitable. For now though, the drinks are warm, the mushrooms are plentiful, and at least we don't have to worry about sunscreen anymore. It's time to face the music. Earth is no longer our home. After centuries of struggling to survive on a planet that's become less hospitable than a parking lot in July, humanity has finally admitted defeat. The underground cities are crumbling, the oceans are still migrating, and the core's heat is running out. It's time to pack up and leave. The Great Escape Plan. 1. The last spaceships. Built from scavenged materials and powered by desperation, these vessels are humanity's Hail Mary. They're not pretty, but they're functional. Think recycled subway cars bolted to rocket engines, solar sails patched together from old satellite panels, navigation systems running on software last updated in 2023. 2. Destination. Who knows? The search for a new home has led to Mars, too dusty, Europa, too icy, Proxima Centauri b, too far, but beggars can't be choosers. 3. Who gets to go? The selection process involves lottery systems rigged, obviously. Skill-based qualifications. Can you fix a reactor with duct tape? Bribes. Algae tablets are the new currency. The final days on Earth. As the last ships prepare for launch, underground cities become ghost towns. The remaining surface survivors form nomadic tribes. The oceans, now fully polar, start freezing over. The emotional toll. Leaving Earth isn't easy. Even after everything it's put us through, it's still home asterisk. The last generation to see the surface is filled with nostalgia for things like grass and birds extinct since year 50. Regret over not taking better care of the planet. Relief that they won't have to deal with hypercanes anymore. The launch. The moment the last ship breaks through the atmosphere is bittersweet. As Earth shrinks in the rearview mirror, the crew can't help but notice. The planet looks oddly peaceful from space. The scars of humanity's mistakes are still visible. The faint hope that somewhere out there, a new beginning awaits. The legacy we leave behind. Earth, now a tombstone for human civilization, will continue its slow transformation. The oceans will freeze, the core will solidify, and the atmosphere will thin to nothing. But somewhere, deep underground, the remnants of our cities will remain, a monument to a species that tried, failed, and tried again. If this wild ride through Earth's demise has left you equal parts horrified and fascinated, do us a favor, like, comment, and subscribe to What If Horizons Asterisk. Got another what if scenario you want explored? Drop it in the comments, unless it's what if podcasts ended on time, because we don't do that here.